Around the Bead podcast, tire talk for trucking, mining, agriculture, and more. Your home for fleet solutions, aiming to inform, pioneer, and entertain the tire world in connected industries. Sponsored by East Bay Tire, keeping essential industries moving forward.
Good day and welcome back to Around the Bead podcast, tire talk for trucking, mining, ag, and more. I'm your host, Joseph, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Big John and Rob Bulldog, who I'm trying to nickname ROI Rob. Gents, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having me.
Are you guys ready to kick the tires today?
Let's get to kicking.
Let's roll.
So today is the inaugural recording of a multi-part, potentially endless series focusing on trucking fleets and their tire performance. Rob, our expert in-house, you're currently the strategic account manager at East Bay Tire. What does that entail?
So it really entails trying to manage some of these larger national fleets or regional fleets and really help them understand their return on investment and what makes their fleet roll and how to make decisions. Sometimes I feel a little bit like an educator of sorts for fleet managers, right? And helping them make these big decisions and which could greatly impact their budget.
So almost like a consultant. You go in and somebody's got a great experience in trucking and how to manage that fleet, that business, but you're educating them on what's the best return they can get on their tires.
Absolutely.
Okay. And you work with small and big fleets or medium-sized fleet? What's a usual fleet for you?
Any size. Usually I've got some local customers who are a couple of trucks all the way up to, thousands of truck fleets, and then anywhere in between, construction fleets, you name it, across the board.
Very cool. Very cool. So I want to hear how that process goes, but could you tell us a little bit of history about you? I mean, you didn't just show up as a strategic account manager. You've been in the industry for decades. Where did you start? Where have you been?
So I started as a commercial sales manager back in 2007 with no tire experience, learning the business, tire by tire, brand by brand, just trying to make relationships with customers. That was a 10-year position that ultimately led me to taking a position with a manufacturing company.
Okay.
So where I was a territory manager covering 4 Western U.S. states, which ultimately led to a Western U.S. sales manager for that company, covering like 9 Western U.S. states. So a lot of background in tires, how they were manufactured and how to market to dealers and end users, and ultimately landed with East Bay Tire as a strategic account manager.
Very
Nice.
cool. The one of the things I love about the tire industry is it always feels like the American dream to me. I've yet to run across somebody who says, "Yeah, I wanted to start in the tire business since I was 10."
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are a lot of successful people in the tire industry that grew up from learning it on a ground level, just like yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with a 4-year degree and sights on probably life in a big city and making this, awful amounts of money, I never expected to be in the tire industry, but I found a home when I landed, and just like you said, the American dream and the people we communicate with on a daily basis, it's just been fun, and I couldn't see getting away from it now.
Well, I want to hear more about that passion, but for the fleets watching the show, let's say you're a fleet manager, you've called in, you've got a hold of Rob Bulldog, you're like, hey, my fleet's just not performing the way I want it to. Right? Maybe I've got some issues with maintenance. Maybe I've got some issues with wear or breakdown. You go in. What is that first process? What does that look like? What do you start with?
I like to start with some questions. We want to understand what they've been doing. What types of tires are they purchasing? Maybe why are they purchasing them? And then we really want to get involved in looking at the fleet. We have to understand what the tires are doing in the fleet. Are they getting irregular wear? Are they getting rapid wear? What kind of conditions are they seeing that maybe isn't working for them? Mm-hmm. So we'll go ahead and do what we call a fleet survey,
Okay.
and we'll start inspecting tires for tread depth, wear pressure, wear. We'll track mileage in that fleet. There's so much that goes on into consulting with a fleet and assessing what they're actually doing and what they're getting out of their product.
Is it something that you can walk into a fleet and you can make assessments or suggestions right away, or is it a longer process? I mean, at what point do you come back to the fleet and say, these are my suggestions and this is what I think you can operate better with?
You know, there's some general opinions you can formulate based on just knowing what their fleet does, but what you really want to do is it's a much longer process because you want to truly understand every fleet is different. You could take two dirt haulers that are 2 miles apart, and they may have different contracts and run completely different routes, and they're going to get completely different wear out of their tires. So it's a longer process of truly seeing their tires in their fleet and what they do for them.
Okay. And that brings me to something I've always wondered. Drivers, especially owner-operators, will talk a lot about mileage. And many people in the industry will talk about mileage. What kind of variation is there in mileage on, say, a line haul steer tire and a line haul fleet versus a dirt hauler? I mean, I hear people talk, well, I'm happy with 75,000 miles. Others say they're not happy unless they get 200,000 miles or more out of a steer tire.
Absolutely. The condition, the rigor the tire is put through completely determines what you're going to get. Take, for instance, a line haul steer tire. That guy may be running from Modesto, California to South Texas and back, or across the U.S. and back. That tire spends 90% of its time just going in a straight line at 60 to 70 miles an hour on the highway versus your local grocery fleet is twisting and turning in parking lots all day long, and the amount of scrub that puts on the tire just eating away at the rubber. You're going to see significant differences in your overall mileage performance.
Wow. So can you look at a tire and see how it's worn and say this is the right tire or not the right tire?
Yeah, absolutely. You can take a quick look at a lot of tires and understand whether it's the right tire or wrong tire based on, it's called application-specific tires, right? Is it got and we can dive into this later if you want, but, closed shoulder for over the road, open shoulder for local regional, decoupler grooves to fight off irregular wear. There's so much that goes into it.
Well, let's dive into that, but let's clarify it for our listeners. When you say closed shoulder, open shoulder, you're referring mostly to drive tires, right? On the
Correct.
drive axle of a truck.
Absolutely.
And are there certain types of tires or designs that perform better in certain applications? How do you go about that?
So it's really the manufacturers. There's so much engineering that's gone into it. I mean, from, long before I was in the industry, a tire was a tire, right?
Right.
And a size was a size. But we've gone so far advanced into application-specific tires. If you're looking at an over-the-road tire, you really want to look at something with a closed shoulder. It's going to handle the heat buildup of that over-the-road long haul, those max revolutions, and is going to create optimal wear for that. Now, if you're doing regional and that scrub creates a different level of heat and you need it to escape, that helps with the open shoulder. Plus, also, whether you're on off-road, you want extra grip. Versus over the road, you want less rolling resistance and the tire to turn easier. So there's a lot of facets that go into it right there.
Okay. So steer tires, drive tires, trailer tires, those are the components that you're looking at. You go in and assess a fleet. What does that look like? I mean, you're tracking data on pen and paper. You're measuring tread depth. I mean, it's been done a lot of different ways over the years. How do you handle it? How does a strategic account manager at East Bay Tire tackle that?
When I started back in 2007, it was pen and paper with a tread depth and air pressure gauge in hand and switching back and forth. Now in 2025, as a strategic account manager for East Bay, we're utilizing some great technology. Mm-hmm. We're utilizing Bluetooth tread depth gauges and air pressure gauges. It's mostly done on a phone. We can create reports instantly and email them to customers, fleet managers, our service managers, letting them know what needs to be done in a fleet. We can generate mileage reports out of it. There's so much. It's come so far since when I started.
John, you remember when you did your first fleet check?
Yeah, pen and paper. Yeah, it was quite different.
Yeah.
Took all day.
Yeah.
Hope that you had the right vehicle numbers on it and you didn't mess it up. But yeah.
Take your wife or somebody along with you to sit in the truck in case it was raining out and do.
There might have been a time or two. I might have done that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it still works.
It still works.
Yeah. Very, very, very cool. Yep. So you go and do assessment. What's something, if I'm a fleet, what's something you think is true before you even step into that fleet? I've got issues. I've got irregular wear. I'm not happy with my fuel economy. I may not even know what my fuel economy impact is on my tires. I've had a program. I've had a tire guy for a bit, but I'm disconnected from it. I need your help. What do you think you're going to find?
I'm betting you're buying a tire based on price rather than data and research. You bought a price point rather than somebody actually spending the time to find out what would work best in your fleet.
Okay.
I got one for you, Rob. How do you have the conversation with a customer who thinks his fleet is top notch and they're running exactly the right tire when your research shows you something different? How's that conversation go?
It's always fun, right? You want to be you want to be delicate because they made a personal decision. So you don't want to immediately walk in and say, "Yeah, you're buying the wrong tire." I don't know who made this decision. You want to be a little delicate with that and have a nice conversation with them. But you absolutely do your research on that fleet and show them the data of what they're doing versus what you know to be true of what they could be doing. And I'll be honest, sometimes we do the research and some of those guys are right. They are buying the right tire and they are doing a good job, right? So that's where we have to help them understand that knowledge and find out where they can make a few tweaks to get better fuel economy or longer wear, so on and so forth.
So the right tire is an interesting one, and we're going to kind of delve into that at least a little bit. There are better tires out there, right? You could find potentially a better tire that performs better in that application. But at the end of the day, it is the fleet's choice. I mean, aren't we supposed to be consultants? We're supposed to be experts. We're supposed to say, all right, you've chosen this tire, and you're getting 150,000 miles out of it. And that's great. We'll support you with that tire. We'll sell you that tire. We'll check it. We'll give you your data on it. But you are missing out on 50,000 more miles per tire if you could go over here.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're really trying to show them what the potential of their tire return could be versus maybe what they're doing today.
Okay. Now, are you seeing fleets come to you with technology? Are they tracking their tires? Are any of the tech in the trucks or trailers or scales impacting tire performance, impacting maybe emergency road calls? How have you seen tech evolve on the transportation side?
Yeah, you'll see there's a couple of things going on. A lot of trucks will have tablets in them now with different tech programs on there for breakdown services where rather than a driver simply calling back to a dispatch office and saying, I've got an issue, they're filling it out on a tablet and it's sending a report in that'll go live to a headquarters, a central dispatch for that trucking company where they'll relay it to whoever their breakdown provider is, right? There's also in-cabin air pressure monitor systems they're leading to the tires on the trucks where drivers can see their air pressure as they're going down the road. If they have an issue, they know about it pretty quickly. Warning bells.
Those are like Bluetooth sensors in the tires, or they're the pressure sensors you see outside the wheel?
There's a couple different options. They can have Bluetooth pressures inside the tires. They can have a system that basically goes on the valve stem and reads the air pressure. There's also monitoring systems that will air the tire up should it go low.
Right.
There's so much other stuff going on now that didn't exist 30 years ago.
Are fleets asking you for that, or are they finding that elsewhere through their truck provider, through PACCAR, through other channels?
A lot of them if they're already, a lot of them have found it through Pack Cars offering it, and different trucking companies, right, or truck manufacturers are offering some of that as they come. But it is obviously a huge added expense to them, and it doesn't necessarily incorporate to their trailer tires. So some are starting to request and ask for more information in the aftermarket world.
Right.
So,
okay. All right. I have one we haven't talked about in a bit, super singles, right? So for our listeners, super singles are taking a dual application where you have two tires and replacing it with one tire. Who came up with that? Does it still exist? What's the application for it? I see those down the highway all the time.
back in the, I'm going to call it the 2010-ish.
Okay, you don't have to be a
years,
historian on the
right?
show, so you can
Man,
ballpark it for
gosh,
us.
ballparking it back then, it was kind of on the rage. It was the new
2010?
thing. They were super popular. It really started with like fuel haulers and being able to add more weight, right? And then it turned into fuel efficiency and being able to get a better rolling resistant tire.
So going back to the weight piece, what you're saying is you take two wheels out and you put one wheel in, and that allows more weight carrying capacity on the trailer.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
How much on average per axle?
If I remember correctly, it's is it 200 per axle?
That sounds about right.
That's
I don't know. Do you remember? I
No,
want to say it's 200 per axle. Don't quote me on it. Because I'll refer back to the second part of your question, the popularity.
Yeah.
Where it was the biggest thing ever. Then it's kind of fallen off a little bit, right? We've debunked a little bit of that as far as how much you can save in weight savings and fuel savings. A lot of it's negated by a flat or by a blown tire,
Right.
Because with a dual, a driver could technically limp along a little bit to get to the next stop.
Yeah.
Whereas with a super single, only one tire on that axle, they're done. They're parked.
I would think some of it has to do with compliance too. Somebody was showing me from the Northeast, Michigan area, where they can carry as much as they can carry. So it's just axles on axles and axles. Now, I'm based in California. We're based in California. We don't see that. You can only carry so much weight. So if you can increase your weight by reducing the tire weight or the wheel weight, there's some value there. But I don't think you see a lot of super singles in Michigan if you can just put on as many axles as you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned emergency calls. You mentioned, hey, you have a dual setup, and what happens if one goes down? You can still ride on the other. How often are fleets talking about emergency breakdown downtime? Is that something, John and Rob, was there more, you think, 20 years ago than there is today? Do we have any gauge? Do we know?
Well, I think the feel would be there was definitely more,
Okay.
10, 20 years ago.
Right.
Are we measuring it? Probably not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I think some of your larger fleets probably have budgets that they analyze, and this is how much we're spending on our emergency road calls. But the average fleet don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get into your very large, national type fleets that span across the U.S., have thousands of trucks, thousands of trailers. It's a huge concern for them. They're definitely monitoring it. Mm-hmm. They understand when you have your monthly, quarterly calls with them, what their ERS of emergency breakdown events are versus, doing fleet services in their yard and preventative maintenance is a huge focus for them. They're starting to really understand the downtime of a driver and what all those costs are associated with it.
I'd be really curious how many breakdowns are preventable, right? So the numbers I looked at a couple weeks ago, where there's roughly 4 million Class 8 trucks in the United States. And ballpark, you're going to get one breakdown every 2 years. So we're just throw some basic numbers out there. There's 2 million Class 8 breakdowns a year.
Yeah.
And that sounds about right to me. Maybe about 1 million of those through major manufacturer network channels, and then another 1 million elsewhere. And that does include mechanical breakdowns, which are smaller. But I'm curious, of the 2 million, how many are you hit something over the road versus was running low air pressure, had mismatched duals, wore tire out, things was already leaking from a valve stem, things that could have been avoided.
Yeah, we do scrap tire analysis with a lot of fleets where we're looking at whatever tires are removed from their fleet.
What does scrap tire mean?
So if a tire is no longer usable, it's now scrap, right? Okay. And it's goes wherever it goes to be recycled, to landfill, whatever happens to them these days. There's a few different things. We can get into that later. But as we do these scrap tire analysis and really start looking at them, there's less and less that are what we would call an impact break or an immediate loss of air pressure.
Yeah.
And more of it seems to be focused on the tire had a puncture in it and was run underinflated, which caused it to fail. Curb damage, some sidewall damage. So it's kind of hard to really gauge it, but a lot of it is absolutely preventable.
I would think that would be of value to me if I'm a fleet. Like if I brought you in to help give me some advice on how to run my fleet, run it better, I would want you going through my scrap and saying, and I'd want the actual data. I want, hey, you have 20% of the scrap is impact. 30% of the scrap is failure due to low air pressure. 20% is you put the wrong tire was put on, whoever's at fault for that, right? And could have been avoided. I'd want that stat.
Absolutely. In a perfect world, we're going into a fleet and doing a scrap tire analysis, and we're finding tires that are completely worn out, and they've reached the maximum age the fleet would allow to run. That's a perfect world, right?
Right.
How often do we see that?
Not very often these days.
It's pretty tough. Once we get, you get drivers trained and you get to a really well thought out and planned fleet program, that's what it'll look like. And we've had some success with that in certain fleets, but there's still scrap in the road that's going to cause issues, right?
Right.
So
you send a tech out to do a fleet check on a large fleet. How many flats do they find during that process on average?
Gosh, it just depends. It's funny. I've had customers tell me that they have a dealer doing their fleet service, and the tech finds 4 flats every time he comes out, no matter what.
Yeah.
Right. I'll be honest. I've had a tech go out and check 100 trailers and find 1 flat. It just depends. I've also had a tech go out and check 20 trucks and find 10 flats. It just depends. Everybody's application is different, right? And what they're coming across on a daily basis could be different. So
I think that's a hard one. I remember times as a tech doing fleet surveys, and you almost felt like you could never win. Yeah. So if you go do the survey, you come back to your boss, or the fleet, and say, hey, there's no flats, there's nothing wrong. You kind of get the look like, did you do anything?
You couldn't find nothing?
You couldn't find nothing? You're telling me you were out there for 4 hours.
What
I'm
were
paying
you really
for
doing?
4 hours worth of fleet service, and you didn't find anything?
These guys have the best program in the world. This is amazing.
Yeah. And then you come back and you're like, hey, you have 4 flats and we need to fix them. You got to be kidding me. You guys aren't doing your jobs. You know, what were you doing during the week?
Yeah.
So it's a catch-22 there, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so big fleets. A lot of our listeners probably aren't familiar with retreading, and retreading is pretty much exclusively done in the big fleet segment. What is retreading?
So retreading is taking that when that new tire is on that truck trailer and it wears out completely, then it becomes known as a casing at that point, a worn out tire. Okay. And that casing will go to a plant where it is essentially the original rubber is buffed off and new rubber is applied to it.
Right.
And it becomes a new tire, otherwise known as a retread.
Okay. And so these plants are regional plants that are owned by the major manufacturers? They're owned by dealers? How does that work?
The plants are, I mean, you've got some majors, right, that are franchised by the major manufacturers to dealers. So most of what's happening at those plants is kind of monitored and overseen by the manufacturers, but is owned by the dealer.
I see. But they're regional plants where
Absolutely.
you can send the casing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll tackle more of the details of that in a full retreading segment, which I'm really excited about.
Looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next question for both of you is, what is something that you've seen evolve dramatically in your time in the industry, and what's something that you think hasn't evolved dramatically in the industry? And I'm thinking of this because of retreading, right? Retreading feels very much the same way that it was 40 years ago. The same process, the same procedures, arguably higher pricing, but something that hasn't changed dramatically. I remember it the same process then. Heck, a lot of it's still done on pen and paper, how you communicate this casing went to this plant and came back.
Yeah.
So what's something that you think hasn't changed, and what's something that you think has changed?
I'll echo the retreading hasn't changed. I can give the same plant tour I gave in 2007 because it's the same exact setup, procedure, and walkthrough, right? Yeah. Nothing much has changed there. I will say one thing that is changed is, when I started in this business, to get longer life and longer wear at a tire, they added more 30 seconds. They made the tire the tread deeper.
Deeper, yeah.
Right, and as it's evolved, and as
fuel economy
and impact on our environment has come about and thrust into the forefront of our face, the tread is getting shallower to make the tire roll better and get better fuel economy, sacrificing longevity of the tire, and overall length of wear. So that's something that's changed dramatically. John, anything for you?
I'm going to look at it from a different angle and go, one of the things I see the big changes in if we're talking retread in the retread shops is it's hard for a retread shop to keep a full crew.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, no one really wants to do the job anymore. It's tougher and tougher, and the result of that is delays, consistency in manufacturing, because it is a manufacturing plant. And that's where I see the biggest change, today versus even 5 years ago, is these plants can't keep employees working. And one guy leaves that plant that day, and it affects the whole production.
It's a much smaller industry than we all think. It impacts almost every industry in the United States, like the entire America's infrastructure. But you're right, labor has been challenging, and there's plenty of complaints out there. I think there's plenty of solutions, definitely another pod.
Yeah.
But as far as working in a retreading plant, absolutely, that's been impactful.
Yeah. I tell you one thing that I think is going to change is, and I'd ask you this, Rob, what impact do the customers see as far as having options against retreading today?
Well, that's another huge change. Glad you asked. In the market, third-tier tire manufacturing, what we would call third tier in the past, was typically, frowned upon by a lot of the big fleets because the tires didn't have the quality, right? That's changed dramatically. The quality of maybe some of the lesser known names in manufacturing are putting out a great product now.
So for our listeners who aren't familiar, there's tiers. In the industry, we refer to them as tiers, like a top tier, a medium tier, and a third tier as far as brand recognition.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Yep.
And I think we could say that with just about anything that's being produced today. Globalization over the last 30 years has changed it so that you're not just getting one great product from one great country. You're getting it from all over, right?
And technology has played a huge part in that. The ability to add consistency to those plants to how something is made.
Right. Well, the one thing that hasn't changed for me in the industry is that it's very much still a people industry. And it's very much still how does a tire dealer, a distributor, an expert bring value to a fleet, what you do every single day, Rob, going in there and saying, this is how you can get the best performance out of your spend.
Yeah.
That seems to be exactly the same, whether it's pen and paper or digital.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, Rob, we got a few of our traditional questions here. Blast from the past, your favorite beads. What's a tire that you remember that's one of your favorites that is no longer produced?
The original HSR
Yeah.
for dirt haulers.
Okay.
This
is a Continental tire?
Yeah, the Continental HSR.
Yeah.
A big problem for any kind of dirt, rock haulers, anybody who did on-off road for that matter,
Right.
was rock drilling where the rock would drill itself down into the tire, expose the steel plies, and ultimately, render that tire useless. When that HSR came out, it was a game changer. The ejectors on it, man, it didn't hold a rock. Had thick shoulders on it for the steer application, scrubbed really well. They've made a number of changes to that tire over the years, and it just isn't quite what it was at that time. It was a problem solver.
I might have sold one or two of those in my past. It's
Yeah.
a great tire.
Yeah.
Great tire.
It's I think we're all victims of nostalgia. Whatever was working back then, we still feel doesn't perform as well as the stuff today.
Yeah, right.
Okay. And lastly, Rob, your BDE, your big dog energy. We don't always wake up thinking this is the industry we'd be in, this is the industry we'd love, but yet here we are. What was the moment you said, this is what I'm going to pursue, this is what I'm going to keep doing, this is what I want to do?
When I took my first job in the industry, I didn't know from day one it was what I was going to pursue. I knew I wanted a career.
Yeah.
But when I started to get comfortable with the job and kind of realize what it entailed, I got to drive around and make friends all day, right?
Yeah.
From hardworking people who started somewhere in the industry turning a wrench or dismounting and mounting a tire and have worked their way up. We got great conversations and great relationships, and I get to make friends every day. And now I get to bring what I've learned in the industry to it, and I just really enjoyed it at that point,
Yeah.
Bringing that educated side that I had to other people who were making emotional and price point decisions, and we get to have great conversations and build good relationships. So it's just a good industry. It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of hardworking Americans trying to get a job done and help the economy move forward.
Yeah. I love that, and one of the things I really appreciate about your perspective, as long as I've known you, is always to keep learning, right? And that's an aspect I would encourage the entire industry to have. So, gents, that's about time for us. Again, Rob, we're going to have you on for multiple parts of this series as we tackle different types of fleets and different types of tires. But for now, gents, let's air this one up.
Let's
All
go.
right, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Around the Bead podcast, tire talk for trucking, mining, agriculture, and more. Your home for fleet solutions, aiming to inform, pioneer, and entertain the tire world in connected industries. Sponsored by East Bay Tire, keeping essential industries moving forward.